Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So today is the host, great. So today's session is twofold. Overcoming objections is the second half, and the first half is how to get offers accepted. And I was trying to identify a person that was really good at it, and I realized that there's a lot of great talent and a lot of great ideas on what we're doing to get offers accepted. So I know one of the ways that I can look at, success here is look at what not to do from what our colleagues are sending us, which is a lot of garbage when you have a listing and you see what type of information is submitted. So I wanted to ask you, who are actually out there getting these offers done, what do you do differently to get offers accepted? And I'm going to take notes here so that we can share with everybody on the recording afterwards.
Hey, Rob, it's Greg.
Hey,
Something
Greg.
that I just incorporated is offering to handle the CO and the fire certs personally to the listing agent.
Okay.
It gives him a little incentive to talk up our position.
Fantastic.
I get all the time, and it's so simple. It's just filling out offers completely correctly, and I'm shocked at how many listing agents say, "Hey, thank you for sending me a properly filled out offer." So that's a big one, honestly. And it's a big one when I'm on the listing side too.
And I'm sorry, I was that Rick?
Yes.
Okay, Rick. It's a great, thank you for sharing. So complete offer, right?
Yeah, just filling it out right, making sure all the fields are populated, making sure it's, the pre-approval is there, it's not 50 gazillion screenshots and all that, make it clean, make it easy,
So Greg, you said offer to do the CO and inspection, the fire inspection?
Yeah, depends on the town, the CO, the fire cert.
Now, ignorantly, Rick, do you do COs with the town, the county, or there are none?
I do not. Miami-Dade County does do COs. Broward and Palm Beach, they don't do COs. So most of my business is in Broward, so I don't usually deal with it.
So is there anything that you need to do, like a smoke cert or nothing?
No. I mean, standard inspections, nothing that I hear from other areas like that. No.
And well-written submitted offer, that probably eliminates 65% of them. What would you think?
I mean, based on what I see when I'm the listing agent, yeah, I would say 60, 70% are not complete in some form, fashion, something or other. Something's weird.
Gotcha.
Rob, I like to add something as well to the well-written offer.
Okay.
I think it's really important to actually call the listing agent, identify who you are. Getting a text message that says, "Hey, I sent you an offer." I don't have any idea who the agent is. And when discussing offers with our sellers, they need to know the team that's going to get their house sold. So it's really important as a buyer's agent or agent submitting an offer to communicate directly with the listing agent. It will help your case a whole lot more. And of course, filling out the contract correctly. In New Jersey, we have to put the REC numbers, and about 80% of the time people know how to look up an REC number. It's a pet peeve of mine.
Gotcha.
So yeah, communicate with the agent, submit a good offer, properly filled out, supporting documentation is the minimum that you should do.
Now, Joe, what about having if there's a property you're interested in, having a conversation before submitting the offer as well?
Yeah, we do that. I mean, as a listing agent, it gets annoying when people call you and ask you if you have offers. I never ask how many offers, but people seem to feel that they should ask how many offers do you have? Really, what does it matter? But yes, having a preliminary conversation with the listing agent just to get a gauge on the closing date or what the seller might be looking for to facilitate an easy closing. Those kinds of things are very important.
What about the golden rule where you treat others like you want to be treated, and your reputation helps you get a transaction done, or somebody else's reputation who's making an offer helps you get the transaction done? And it's not just because Joe DiLorenzo likes them, but it's because you have confidence that they're gonna have integrity and get the deal closed and do what they say they're gonna do, right?
Well, yeah, that
How much
comes.
does that mean?
That comes, it means a lot. And, if a seller asks our opinion, we should give them our opinion. The other thing is, treating others with respect. This just happened the other day. We had a listing, Stacy received 24 offers. And then, at the last hour, agents are calling, asking, well, what do I need to do? What's your highest price? Our standard answer is we treat everyone equally. Would you like to give me an offer and then I could tell everyone else what your offer is? So that's just my feeling.
Hey, Rob
Yes.
Littman. Hi.
Hey,
To
Rob, how you
piggyback
doing?
on Greg, I'm all right. Piggyback on Greg's thing. Besides the CO, some towns just fire, but some towns fire and habitability, and you got to be careful with that. But if you make the call, if it's habitability, I've also said we'll get the CO and we'll take care of anything if your client can afford it, up to $1,000 or pick a figure of any requirements by the town, because they can pick on stuff that could be thousands of dollars. As far as handling the right paperwork, like the other gentleman said, it's also be sure that if there's disclosures in there, the seller's disclosure, lead paint, that you get those to get signed and send in. I also have all my people see kind of lease situation they're in, if they could be out quick. And like the other agent said, when you call the listing agent, don't ask him how many offers he has. It's ridiculous. But also, what's important to the seller? They're looking to get out quick. They're looking to get out late. What matters to them? Because they maybe also offer a rent back, as well as I load everything up. I find out if it's an estate sale, obviously there's a lot of shit left over. Sometimes they're downsizing. So just say, look, we'll throw anything out that you leave behind. You don't have to do a thing. Because I explained to my clients, for $700-800, you get a dumpster, get a couple guys, throw all the stuff in there when they move out. As long as you're not throwing rocks and dirt in there, it's always gonna be $700-800, and that can matter to somebody. You never know what the little thing is that matters. The littlest, slightest thing could matter, and those are some of the things I do.
All right, I'm gonna ask something that's a little bit less intuitive, and I want somebody to maybe pick up this and run with it. But we're kind of working with a fixed purchase amount, right? So let's say we have a place that's 500, we get the person to bid 530, and now we're just trying to grease the skid so we get our offer accepted. Who wants to attack the subject of getting your clients to make more aggressive offers so that they can win the bidding, and how they go about doing that?
When you're going over asking like that, we're still doing appraisal waivers. So that, that's definitely something. If it's listed at 5 and you're offering 530, I feel from a buyer's agent standpoint that we still have to get our client to waive at least $30,000 the appraisal. And I also include payment, like if they're putting 20% down. So I'd show proof of funds for 20% down plus an additional 30,000 plus closing costs, just to show that we have it, that my client's qualified and not just making this offer and then they're going to get declined.
Right.
Emailing me, Rob?
Well, no, I'm putting you on the comment list so you get credit.
Oh,
There you go. So you go excess.
that one Joe was just talking about where I had 27 offers because 3 people came in after the highest and best deadline under asking. I might add, it was pretty funny, but we had so many who were still going over asking and then waiving the appraisal completely, waiving the appraisal with a cap.
Has anybody had a listing where you're in the past, let's say 2 months, where the buyer was 100,000 or more above your asking price? Buddy? Okay. Because I'm just wondering if appraisal waivers are using them a lot for underages on the appraisals, or if it's just a negotiating tactic. Any comments?
I was a buyer's agent a month ago on a property that under appraised. It didn't even appraise for the listing price, and we had offered 40,000 over. And my client had to come up with all the cash, the 40,000 plus the extra 20 and everything, just because he really wanted the house. So I mean, I had that happen where it wasn't just a make it seem better. We actually had to use it. It didn't appraise and they had to come to the table with a lot more money.
And Rob, from the lending side, it's Bruce, it's about 50-50 what I see. It's either for the, just to be able to compete to have that, or it's that it's both ways.
Fantastic.
Hey,
Um,
Rob,
yes,
it's Adona. How are you?
good.
So I've done something differently in the last offer I submitted, and the agent actually called me. She said the only reason she is pushing my offer is the way I wrote my offer. On the email, I listed everyone my client is using, and I put next to it preferred. So preferred attorney, preferred lender, preferred title, even insurance. And she was impressed. So she went and told her client that this would probably be a smooth transaction since her buyer is using all her preferred affiliates. So even though we went asking price, there was multiple offers. There was one that was 25,000 more. She tried to get me to go up. And I said, we'll just give you an extra 2,500 just to say that we're serious, but that's our offer. So it did help, and we're under contract.
Showcasing team, familiar, for team, so they know it gets done. So I think right now we're all in the mindset of, we have this offer and what are we going to tell the listing agent to get it accepted? What about tactics to get our clients to make offers that will get accepted? Because if you run the comps in many cases, you have a $500,000 house, you say, hey, this comps out at, maybe with a time adjustment, 520, but we all know it's going to go for 560. How is that dialogue in that scenario?
Rob, what I have done is I created a quickie Excel sheet and I pulled as many sales as I could, comparable as best as possible. And it's very simple. You make a list price column, you make a sales sold column, and you make a percent column. So you show that to a buyer and let them make the decision. If they see everything went over, 10% over asking, or 12% or 13%, whatever it is, I had a guy come back to me and said, that was very helpful for telling me that. And he put an offer, he decided what the percent over asking was. There you go.
So I'm looking for, let's see if I can find this. Joe, this is piggybacking off what you just said. Average. So I have view freeze. This is tying right into what you're talking about here, Joe. So sold price and list price. So if you were to go into a neighborhood and say, look at the average list price, 613, average sales price, 665. And you were to give them this information, I think it helps your buyers. The average is going for 8.5% above the ask price. And then you can further dissect this, because who has seen agents that are notorious for underpricing homes and purposefully? Has anybody on this call seen agents that every time you see one of their listings, they grossly underprice it?
Carlos Turner.
Carlos Turner underprices it because he wants to get a lot of offers. So if you have an agent, right, what's stopping us from going to somebody and saying, hey, we're bidding on a Carlos Turner listing, Carlos chooses to price it auction style. His listings usually go for 108 to 125% of original ask price. Do you think a buyer would appreciate knowing that?
For sure.
Okay, so if we're not just focusing on the house, right? And the market, we're focusing on the listing agent, right? So who mentioned Carlos Turner? Was that Niren?
Paul,
Paul. Um,
Rob, on the Excel sheet, I just want to add, I liked having a list of, 10 sales or 20 sales. And
Right.
let the buyer see, hey, one went for 15%. I mean, the average might be 8%, but let them see that it could be higher. And let them make the decision. Yes, you could put an overall, here's the average percent, but it was pretty effective listing individual homes. It's not a big deal to do.
Here's something that I like to use. I've used it with some of your colleagues. If I say escalation clause, what percentage of agents just say, we don't accept it? Just throw out some numbers. 50%, 80%, 100%. What are you guys seeing out there in the market?
Around 60%.
60% are saying, take your escalation clause and rip it up. Who is it? Anybody else seeing any numbers higher or lower than 60?
I just have to say, when they have multiple offers, that sometimes they send you an email what they're looking for on an offer, and they specifically say, do not include escalation clause.
Okay. So is anybody gonna say that you see escalation clauses rejected higher than 60%?
I agree with that.
Okay, so Stacy says that I would say that, the only reason that it might be at 60% is because a certain percentage of the listing agents don't even understand what it is. But the ones that do, and the more sophisticated agents, listing agents, are probably saying, don't put the escalation clause in, is my experience.
Rav, what's an escalation clause?
An escalation clause is let's say we made it, the property is listed for 500, right? We come in with an offer of 510 and we say that we're willing to go up to 575. We're willing to bid 5,000 more than your best bona fide offer up to 575. And
Okay, thank you.
yes. So who uses escalation clauses if the listing agent doesn't specifically say, I won't accept it?
Someone's using one today on a pre-approval letter I just put together, so it's still being used, but it's not a multiple offer home.
Yeah.
I use
That's
it.
me then, Bruce.
And there she is.
Was that a Donna?
No, Trudy.
Trudy. How are you, Trudy?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Trudy,
Yes.
you have to pipe up here. You get a lot of offers accepted. What are
we
you
get a
doing?
lot that aren't accepted as well, to be honest.
But what do you do other than that lovely accent that you have that I think gives you a little bit of an advantage?
Each offer is different. So you have to, like the one that I'm doing today, they've only got one other offer. So as far as I'm concerned, that's not a best and final, because how could you do a best and final with two offers, really? You just pick the best one. So I'm doing, and they've not called highest and best, so I'm submitting a escalation.
So do you, Trudy, try to build a strong rapport with the listing agent? And what extent do you go to try to make them understand your client and like you?
Well, I call them first. So I'm doing two offers today, and I call each of them. Obviously, I let them know about, preferred lender that we're using. The attorney is going to be used by ours. I also let them know that I have a preferred home inspector as well, who's excellent. So my clients or our clients, because David's here, we tend to use this home inspector, and everybody seems to like it. They just seem to say, oh, I can see that's going to be a smooth transaction, and I appreciate you work on it. I mean, sometimes we don't get them all, but I always get a call back saying, that they did what they could for us. That's about it. So it's all, each offer's different.
So, David, how many are you submitting today?
I'm actually going through the offers from my listing. I've got 5 offers that came in. So I'm not actually submitting anything today because I was.
So you're reviewing offers, okay?
I am, yeah. And one of them, it's funny about completing the offers properly. I had one, it was a horror story. It didn't have who they were buying it from. It didn't complete any of the municipal assessments. It said lead-based paint was applicable for a home built in 1987. Got the address wrong. It had a very vague appraisal. It said, we'll give you $5,000 if the house doesn't appraise. And that was it. I think, well, so that was awful. I did ask it.
That's an example of what not to do.
What not to do, yeah. It checked all the boxes of what not to do.
Yeah.
So,
to be fair, though, Rob, the offers that I'm writing up today are David's clients.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, yeah, they're my offers. I have my admin doing the work.
Yeah, no, I'm putting my name on the contract though, because I'm I'm being wily with how I'm presenting them. So it's all fair.
All right, put my foot in my mouth here. All right, so David, you're kicking some butt here. So let me ask you, whose idea was it to use the escalation clause? Yours, David, or Trudy's, or your clients?
Mine. My clients don't know. We've not talked about an escalation before because every house that these poor buyers have gone for have been multiple, and multiple as in more than 2. And they always say no escalation, obviously no love letters, which we don't do. And so this is going to be the first opportunity that I've managed to do an escalation for them. So I've just sent them a message saying, give me a call. I'm writing up an escalation. And they'll go with it because they trust how we present offers.
I've been warned about escalation clauses, regardless of highest and best, from many people. I'm scared of them just because I've been told that, like the love letters, there's an unethical side of unequal opportunity for everyone. So
no, because everybody's got an opportunity to do one. And the only thing I can say to that is a lot of the time we can't do them, and they do say, no escalation clause. And obviously, if we're told no escalation clause, we wouldn't do it because they'll probably go with a lower number rather than the higher. But the thing with escalation clauses, you can't make the 2 numbers widely different because that's not the point of an escalation. So you can't go in like with 2 figures, 100,000 between, because that's not really what an escalation's for. An escalation is just to pique you a little bit. So
it is 510, 575 too much?
I think so. Maximum that I would do is probably in the 20s. So the one that I'm doing now, because it's a smaller house, so we're going to offer 3,000, and it depends on the house. Sometimes it's 5,000, sometimes it's 10,000. Jump up, because obviously if it's a high priced house, they may not go with a 2,000 increase. They might just take the one that's the best. So this one's a lower price one. So we're doing a 3,000 jump, and I'm only doing a 12,000 escalation. And there's various reasons for that, because we've got to be careful in today's market of how they're going to appraise. And if they don't have a lot of liquid funds to cover the gap, it's going to fall apart. So some of the clients that we're working with, as to you, I heard you earlier about how they're listed and they're listed low. They are extremely low. So I've got one that's listed that we're offering on, and I think it will appraise probably 60,000, 70,000 over what it's listed at. And I've got the comps to back it up, but they've gone and priced it really low. to try and get the people up there. Now, my client may be struggling to fill that gap. So we've got to be comfortable that it's going to appraise for us to recommend the number that they go in at. And we've had some that I've said to them, we cannot see it appraising. So, you can't go crazy with an offer because if it's accepted, it's going to fall apart anyway.
Right. So, there's two things that, there's one thing that nobody mentioned, which was like limiting inspection items. And hopefully we're not waiving home inspections, but maybe we limit home inspection items.
Yep.
And do you, as a normal course of business, how do you write up home inspection, Trudy?
We write up typically, if it goes more than one, it depends as well. Sometimes I'll slide in major in there. And if you stick in major, that basically covers everything. But typically we do safety, structural and environmental. But I always put that we will only do requests to a seller on safety, structural, environmental. So it doesn't mean that you don't have a home inspection, and it doesn't mean you can't kill the contract if something comes up that you don't like.
Right. I mean, you pretty much can still kill the contract, but you're just using that as a kind of a hook to get them in, right?
Yep.
And to be honest with you, I think setting the expectation of nitpicking is probably, if you overpay and you try to be overly aggressive with the nitpicking of a home inspection, I think that's probably still not in balance now, right? You're going to be at jeopardy of killing deals with that. The escalation clause technique, and this is not a manipulation, but I really believe that this is a way to get a client to bid their comfort level. And what I mean by this is, let's just say that we have a property listed at 500, 499, 500. After looking at the comps, talking to the client, they might have lost 3 houses already. They say they want to bid 510. And if they had the opportunity to do an escalation clause, maybe they would go up to 550, right? But their offer is 510. Does the value of that house increase or decrease because another agent put an offer in of 545, or it does not? Does that really matter if somebody put an offer in of 545? I see you there, Stacy. Are you able to talk? Like, if somebody made an offer, does that increase the value of the house or not really?
What do you mean?
So
I don't think it would. This is Maurice. I don't think it would.
So Bruce, the fact that somebody else was willing to pay 545, does that increase the value, or does that just make the client feel a little bit better about winning because somebody else was bidding that high?
No, I think it increases the value. In other words, for their escalation, it warrants them feeling comfortable with escalation. Is that where you go?
Right. So if somebody paid
Yeah, I
five,
get it.
if,
No, I
if a
get
house is listed for 500, right? They came in at 510 with an escalation to 550. And if nobody bid 545 where they got it at 550, does that improve the value of the house as opposed to if they just paid 550 and they didn't know what anybody else bid?
There must be something wrong with me. You just said if they went in at 510, if nobody did the if they didn't have to exercise the escalation, they're still at 510. So what am I missing what you're saying?
So what I'm saying to you is, let's say that a listing agent says we're not accepting any escalation clauses, right? And they win the property. Instead of having an escalation clause to 550, they just make their offer 550, right? They don't know what the second highest offer was. Does that impair the value of the house? And I think the answer is no.
We don't know.
Still
Well, we
getting,
don't know. Yeah.
but they're still getting the same house, right? If they're willing to pay 550, if somebody else was willing to make that offer, right? Maybe that makes them feel a little bit better, but they're still in that same house for the same payment, the same down payment, the same appraisal risk, everything's the same. The only thing missing is somebody providing an offer to substantiate that another person was willing to pay 5,000 less.
I actually
Correct.
think that there is value in knowing that. There's less likely to be buyer's remorse. And for the buyer to think, I wonder if I overpaid at 550. Whereas if you know that you only made, your deal was only accepted by $5,000, then you know you have a better sense for the market value being up there.
Rob, am I right in assuming it kind of reminds me of, what's the term you guys used? Right of first refusal with a number. Isn't it kind of the same thing? Like right of first refusal, but for 20 grand or 10 grand. Isn't it kind of similar to that?
The right of first refusal, that goes back to the time when you used to have home sale contingencies, right? It's kind of like the reverse right of first refusal.
Well, in other words, they have a chance to come up if they have to. They want the right to be able to take another swing if they have to. So really, it's like a right of first refusal, but with a number.
Right. Let me explain to the audience here, Bruce, what a right of first refusal is. Because you remember years ago, Bruce, people would take a home sale contingency, right?
Yeah.
And then a lot of times when there was a home sale contingency, if Bruce was selling his house and buying mine, just to give you a context, Bruce needed to sell his house in order to buy mine. He'd say, look, I need a home sale contingency so I can close on yours. If you accept this, we'll allow you to continue to market the house, but I want a right of first refusal if you get a better offer. Okay, this is so foreign right now, Bruce, because it doesn't really happen. But in that case, if David Hayes brings in an offer $10,000 higher than Bruce has the option to match that offer or let David buy it. That was the way the game is. It's a really astute observation, Bruce. It's kind of like the reverse of that, where you're saying that you're willing to
Gives you another swing. You don't want to. You don't have to have the best.
You're willing to pay 5 grand more than whatever that offer was. So it's a great observation. But my thought is, it might make them feel better, Bruce or David, if they knew that there was another offer at 545 and they paid 550. But it really doesn't affect the house. It doesn't affect where the appraisal is. It doesn't affect what the appraisal shortage would be, right? It just maybe makes them feel a little bit better. But in this environment here, if they were willing to pay that, if somebody else was willing to pay it, my discussion point here is, if most sellers or listing agents are not willing to accept a right of first refusal, or excuse me, not right of first refusal, a escalation clause, why don't we then use that saying, David, if you were willing to pay 550, if somebody else was paying 545, then it seems to me that that's the price where you would go to not to lose the house, right? And do you want to take a chance of bidding 525, 535, where it's a strong probability that we might lose the house? So it's kind of like this insurance policy that you're paying. And if you've lost 2 or 3 homes, I think, having their top line on an escalation clause is helpful to getting them to bid wherever they would be comfortable. Does that make any sense? And I want you to push back if it doesn't, because I think a lot of us are too close to the business that we overthink it ourselves.
It does to me, because your most escalation clauses are not allowed on multiple offers. So this is really only something that comes to play more when you don't know if you're making your no regret offer. You're making an offer and you want another swing if there is that kind of activity. So to me, from my side, what I see with people losing houses, you guys killing yourselves, I think it's kind of in that bucket. If they allow it, I think it's helpful, but it's also a little weird, because then the seller, to pull a couple other people's point, the guy Greg, they could use it to work the person and say, but I think it can be helpful. Anything in this market could be helpful, to be able to have
I mean,
chance.
here's a counter argument. So Bruce, if you and Robbie wanted to buy a house and it was 500, okay, and you said, hey, Greg, we're thinking of making an offer of 510, but if you knew what the other offers were, we would really be willing to go up to 550. Okay, then my question is, what's the value to you and Robbie, Bruce? It's 550. Okay, you just want to have this comfort that you got a good deal, right? That you didn't overpay relative to everybody else. But I think the real value would be 550. And if most sellers, most listing agents aren't accepting escalation clauses, my contention, Bruce, would be that you should make an offer of 550 if that's where you'd be willing to go to if somebody else wanted it, right?
So you're saying don't do the escalation, just go in at 550?
So I'm saying if they don't accept the escalation and you're coming in at
I'm
510.
gonna go in with a no regret offer. Yeah.
And we know that there's already, you know, more than likely multiple offers, and we've been told there are multiple offers, right? And your number is 510, but you would be willing to go to 550. David tells you that we're not accepting any escalation clauses. My contention would be that you and Robbie should go in at 550. And I think that we, being so close to the business, we're trying to help you get such a great deal that we outsmart ourselves and you wind up not getting the house.
I agree with what you're saying, Rob. I think that if we structure it and ask them, you know, what do you think the home is really worth? What will it be worth to you in the future? And then say, how would you feel if someone else gets the home for 550 when you really would have gone up to that price? The value is in having the home that you want. The value is in having a home that you know is going to appreciate in the future.
Right.
They're all going to.
And Colleen, if interest rates go down in 6 months or a year, what do you think is going to happen to home prices?
They're going to go up. It's just, you know.
They're going to continue to go up. And then won't you be glad that you paid an extra 10 or 15,000 to make sure that you were in this house so that you can have the ability to refinance it if and when rates go down and take advantage before prices continue to go up.
Exactly.
So I think that we are too close to the transaction at times, that we outthink it for ourselves and that it costs our clients at times. Okay. And I'm not saying that, we try to convince our clients to overpay for properties, but if we're not getting properties, if they've lost 2 or 3 properties, the market's saying that your bidding strategy is rejected, right? And if you want to have a home, you need to have a different strategy.
I hear agents all the time saying, well, I don't want my client to overpay. What is overpay if they get what they want?
Colleen, that's exactly what I'm saying. I don't want you to overpay. What does overpay mean? I mean, prices are going up. So if you don't get the house, then you underpaid, but you're homeless, right? Because you didn't win the property. You weren't the successful bidder. So anyway, I think I don't know that we're going to get resolution to this here, but my core belief is if somebody, if Bruce and his wife are willing to go up to 550 and they started out at 510, Colleen says we don't take escalation clauses. I think their offer should be 550 because they would have been happy with the 550 if they would have known somebody else bid 545. And who's to say that, they couldn't have some bogus offer from somebody in their office, make an offer of 545 to get you to 550. Do you think if there were 100 transactions that somebody might do something nefarious like that, Colleen?
And no, they're not going to bother with that. I mean, think about it. If they have a lot of offers, they're not even thinking that way. They're thinking how to figure out how to handle all these offers.
Well, I mean, somebody can make an offer of 545 and not even have the ability to close, right? And they say, hey, we had an offer of 545. It was a, FHA, 3.5% down with a 581 FICO, and they're getting a gift from their parents. Like, what could possibly go wrong there? But that's a 545 offer, and you have to go to 550. So I think
something that's worth mentioning, Rob, a lot of real, there are some buyers that don't realize, even if they don't have the liquidity, that they can waive some appraised value. So if you have somebody that doesn't have quite the liquidity, like Stacy was mentioning in their first example, where, we have a buyer that really has the liquidity, but if you have somebody that's maybe putting 10% down and they want to compete, they can still waive 5% of their appraised value if the program only requires 5% down. So even people with less than, if you're putting 3% down or 5% down and you don't have any extra money, you can't do this. But if you're putting in 20% down or 10% down, you can still waive some appraised value. The buyer might be willing to pay a little PMI, but you could still do it. So that's just something to keep in mind too, for those of us that have, buyers that don't have that kind of liquidity. There's still an option for them to pay a little bit more PMI. Maybe, they pay PMI of $60 more a month and they could, waive 5%. That's a big deal.
Could you, Bruce, could you do that a little slower?
Yeah, with Rob's permission, I don't want to go sideways on it.
But that's a very interesting thing, and I haven't heard it before.
If you have a buyer
Sorry.
that's putting 10% down, gang, let's say they're buying a house for $100,000 and they're putting down 10,000. If the program they're going for only requires them to put 5,000 down, they can waive up to 5,000 of appraised value because they have 10. So even though they may be thinking of their down payment as, all they have, if the program doesn't require, most programs don't require 20% down. You can buy a home as little as 5% down. So conceivably, as long as the buyer gets it, and if they're tired of losing homes, most buyers may not want to do this, but there are some buyers that they just don't want to lose homes. And they initially wanted to put 20% down. During COVID, it happened all the time where they said, forget it, we'll waive 5% of the appraised value and we'll pay PMI for looking at it like a 15% down loan. Does that make sense? In other words, whatever the down payment requirement is, if you're putting more than that down, you could waive that.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Very good
And again,
idea.
for the non-liquid buyers. I mean, if you have a buyer with liquidity, it's a home run. We had a transaction. I know Lelab worked on a transaction for Mickey Littman last month where it didn't appraise. We knew it wasn't, but the buyer was putting 50% down, so it didn't matter. But for the ones that don't have that, you do have that flexibility. The buyer just has to be cool with it. And then you may get a question from the listing agent saying, well, how the heck are they going to waive 5% when you didn't show proof of liquidity? And then the answer would be, well, they're willing to pay PMI and do this as if it's 5% down. And we've had transactions like, oh, okay, cool. And that's how it went.
I had that, Bruce, in that example I was saying, 2 of the people with the proof of funds for the appraisal gap, I actually got phone calls and letters from the lender saying, hey, here's their appraisal gap where they're pre-approved at 20% down, but the appraisal gap comes from, we'll do 10% down if we have to. And, and all the numbers to the seller are the same. It's just.
Exactly. The seller really doesn't care.
The only thing that changes is the LTV, which doesn't affect the seller. They don't care. So yeah, I did have that. And I understood. I was like, okay, great. So I checked off their proof of funds. I'm like, yep, got it. Okay.
Yep. Perfect.
So, sometimes, especially us old timers that have been in the business more than 5 or 6 years, we were accustomed to trying to figure out how we can get the best deal for our client. And that mindset is defeatist right now, when the reality is we need to educate our clients on the probability of being a successful bidder, and not on substantiating what the market value of the house is, because the market value, and not to contradict myself, but it's defined by what a ready, willing, able buyer that can perform is willing to pay, right? The market value is not what an appraiser says it is, right, Bruce? Because you have transactions that close where people make decisions. We're going to put down the difference. We're going to cover the difference. We don't care. And now that is the newest comp, correct?
Correct.
So in a rising environment with limited inventory, historical comps are less relevant to what the supply of buyers and inventory and what that imbalance might look like. And for us to be the highest value to our clients, we don't want to sell them out and say, hey, give me a blank check. But we want to give them something that has a high probability of succeeding. And, some people respond differently, but if somebody was willing to pay $15,000 more, Bruce, without going into MI, they're putting 30% down and they could put an extra 15 grand down.
Well, they don't even have to. They could just take the same loan amount. We just affect the LTV.
Okay, so if they
Mickey's buyer was putting 50% down. The house underappraised by like 70 grand or something significant, but we kept the loan amount the same. Our loan to value went up 5%. It didn't matter. We gave them the same money. They put the same money down.
Right, but what I'm saying though is let's just say that somebody was comfortable borrowing 300 on a 510, right? And we got them to bid 530, so they had a better likelihood of winning, and then they borrowed 320. What is that extra 20 going to cost them? $120 a month, something like that?
Pretty much, yeah.
And sometimes, you know, if you were to look at it from the perspective of somebody looking to rent a property and there's multiple tenants trying to get it, how easily does somebody say, hey, you know, I'll pay 150 more on that rental because I'm only going to be there for 3 years. When the reality is, if they're buying a property that's likely to increase and they're likely to have a chance to refinance it, and it's 120 bucks, it's what, $30 a week? It's what's $5 a day, $4 a day. You know, if somebody could for $4 a day have the certainty of being in a house that they're comfortable with, I just think we need to change our mindset in the way that we talk to people and not try to be a hero all the time, and make sure that they're aware of what their alternatives are. Because I want to go to an agent, maybe one that's, you know, not even spoken so far, but when somebody's like under the pressure of knowing that there are multiple offers, are they logical or are they emotional off the chart? What do you think?
You know, Rob, last week you talked about the eBay effect, and I think real estate is moving more towards an eBay buyer effect in terms of properties when buyers are buying because of the shortage of inventory. So the market perception is not that, you know, it's a normal market, that it's a market where the property becomes a unique piece of art. That's the way I'm trying to picture it these days to get the buyer offer accepted.
So, but when they're making an offer, would you say that they are logical and rational, or they're emotionally intimidated by the process?
I think they're emotionally tied to the transaction and to the property, and that their emotion is really key to them. And if their vision is that they really want that property, it's your job as their agent to try to do the best you can to succeed in that transaction. You know, I like what you said about the 550, because, you know, a lot of agents, and I was taught too, you got to get the best price for your property. But in this market, it's changed. There's an inventory shortage. These particular properties that are out there, they need to be treated like a piece of art.
So who's and we're not going to get to the other objection handling piece, but maybe we'll do that on a future call. But who's had conversations with buyers and have explained to them in a rising environment, you know, appraisers will generally give, you know, 1%, 0.5% a month. Is that what generally goes on, Bruce or Anthony? You have some appraisal experience, right?
They allow time adjustments now. Yeah, they allow them.
Right. So it might be 0.5% a month, like 6% a year, or even 0.75% a month.
That's exactly what it is right now in Bergen County. Last time I checked was about 3 months ago, 6% a year.
And so the way they substantiate it, Rob, is they put comps on the appraisals now too, and they just take a percentage off. So you have 3 active comps, active, not sold. So that's how they're able to substantiate that the appraisal rules have changed. We're now showing active comps that the escalation is going up. That's why we're allowed to use it, which is perfect, because years ago, how would you know? Now you have the comps of listings.
So how many of us have gotten to that level of detail to get a buyer comfortable and say, look, hey, the last sale is here. Appraisers are adding 0.75% per year. That one, or per month, that one went under contract 5 months ago. So that would be, I don't know, 4% more. And, you know, to play devil's advocate, Bruce, if you're the buyer, hey, Bruce, let's go up to the 550, but let's put an appraisal contingency in at 530. And if it appraises under 530, we have the ability to get out or make a decision whether we want to put more money down.
Yeah, these
I
are
see
called,
the agents having those conversations too, Rob. I see the agents also having those conversations.
Right, but I want to give everybody more tools and resources to help your clients not overpay, but make decisions whether they get the house. So if somebody had a limited appraisal waiver of, you know, we're offering 550 or 530, but we're willing to pay 20,000 more than the appraised value. If it appraises less than 410, then we can either renegotiate or cancel the contract. I think that would give a buyer a certain, you know, foundation of comfort. And, you know, I see your smiling face, your picture there, Colleen. What is your thought on that? Having worked with lots of agents, do you think that agents can, you know, bridge the success gap there by, you know, telling their buyers that you have a limited window that you're willing to accept?
Absolutely. I
So-
think it's, I think it's our duty to do this for them. Because if you don't get the house they want for them, if they miss out, they're not thanking you for it. They're thinking you did something wrong. They don't
Right.
think that they didn't pay what they're supposed to. They blame you.
Right. So if you went,
I've seen agents pick up clients from other realtors because they've lost too many houses.
right. And Colleen, if you went into, for example, like Pembroke Pines and you had a competitive bidding situation and you said, look, Colleen, the last 5 houses that went under contract in less than 10 days sold at a 9% premium. Okay. When you look at the comps, they're going to look at homes that have been on that the market rejected. So if this house is fresh on the market, you know, we had to wait for somebody to get into the showing. And then when we were walking out, somebody else was coming in. And highest and best is due 4 days or 5 days after it's listed. This is more likely to behave like one of these properties that sold less than 10 days. So we need to educate our clients and let them make the right decision by having complete information. Is that?
Rob, it's Denise. I just want to interject something here that's so powerful listening to everyone. We have just outstanding team of in-house lenders. And it is so critical that everything that's discussed here gets communicated appropriately to the realtor that is holding that listing. And I don't have a doubt in my mind that our lenders would be willing to get on a phone with the realtor to explain to the listing realtor some of these details that would help in the negotiations. Because at this organization, you hold these wonderful meetings and people are brought up to speed. So many times the listing side doesn't even realize what you're trying to offer. And by having that lender on the phone with the realtor who's making the offer is extremely powerful to explain some of these details. If a realtor felt comfortable to include them and felt that they were bringing value, which having done it myself, it makes a difference sometimes in having your offer accepted or not accepted. Bruce's points were stellar and really can make a difference. And some of those details are hard to explain when you don't do it every day.
Right. So I hope, look at it, we have 1 minute left. I hope that this kind of opened up your mind a little bit to, you know, sharing with high emotional buyers, which is what most buyers are. And I would say that they're emotionally frustrated because they might have lost several homes. And when you're emotionally frustrated, you're not inclined to make rational decisions. And the person that's going to give them the guidance is the person with the fiduciary duty to help them be successful in what they're looking to do. And that's our job. And to the extent that, you know, this is an emotionally frustrating time for them, we need to be that rock that gives them data and helps them feel good about the decision that they make. Okay. And one of the things I'm suggesting is that if they were willing to go to 550, it doesn't make any difference if somebody made an offer of 545 and they bid 5,000 more. I think it's more important if we limit the appraisal waiver, the appraisal gap to 20,000. That's more valuable than having some other person bid 545 to get me up to 550, in my opinion. Okay. And if we can look at a lot of our buying clientele as emotionally frustrated, maybe we can talk to them from a different perspective to help them be more comfortable in making a decision that will be a decision that they're very grateful for. Okay.
I think like sharing a story. I've used this a few times with our realtors, telling them a story that they can share. My grandson paid $35,000 more for his townhouse when he originally bought it, which was 3 years ago. And it was, you know, I said to him, go ahead and overpay because, you know, with the location, you'll never lose money with this. I can promise you that. So he did it. P.S. 3 years later, he sold it for $100,000 more. You know, which is a huge amount, but it just goes to say, you know, you can't. Real estate is here. It's solid. It goes up, it goes down, but it is solid and it is consistently increasing. If you look at prices from years ago, what the prices are now, and I think we have to also stress the value of getting the home that you want and being able to live in that home and enjoy it. What's $5,000 more? It's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, $10, $15, $30 a week. Okay. It's really very, very, I mean, it's not my money, but it's very, very light in terms of the alternative of having to go and look for something else and having the uncertainty of whether you will find another property. And if and when you do, maybe you're going to even pay more than what you could have paid today. Right.
Rob, I just wanted to throw in, and I'm sorry for interrupting like this. I always go back to my life and everyone I've ever known. No one's ever moved in a house and said, wow, this is great. We have so much extra cash. When you buy a house, you're going to be broke for a while. And you know what? Would you rather have HBO or have that house? Because at the end of the day, the best deal is getting the house you want and quality of life. And I've used that many times. It works.
And I will bet you that most of us, when we bought our first or second house, we were like, am I doing the right thing? That, you know, I barely qualify. I'm uncomfortable. But after a year or two, you're like, oh, you know, my income went up, the value went up, you know, it was a no-brainer. I'm so glad I did it, right?
Years ago, we actually used to illustrate, you know, years ago when rates were double digits, we used to actually illustrate why a buy down made sense. And the increase in payment, you know, the annual increase in wages of maybe 4% or 2% a year, within 2 years, the buyers are very comfortable. And sometimes that conversation needs to be had when you have buyers stretching, they may feel uncomfortable, but with tax benefits and their wages, you ask them what their wages were 2 or 3 years ago, they get it. They do feel more comfortable. And it's not like you're trying to Mickey fin them. You're just trying to help them deal with the reality of the market, you know?
Right. So I think the one thing that I'm taking from this here is all of the techniques to try to get the offers accepted, we're focused on how do we present it to the listing agent, right? How do we put it into a better light? How do we build rapport? And I think the other piece to that is we need to get our clients to be more competitive so that we have something better to work with. And it's not we're selling our clients out, it's that we're educating them to make the right decision. And perhaps if they don't accept an escalation clause, having a appraisal waiver limited to 20,000, even if you're putting 50% down, gives your client some level of comfort, right? That they know that it has to appraise for, you know, it's listed for 500, we're paying 550, it has to appraise for 530. Okay. I think that, you know, makes your offer a lot more competitive, and that gives, you know, Joe DiLorenzo and Anthony and everybody's buyer a little bit of comfort that, you know, that they're not paying 50,000 more than it's worth because they're paying 50 over ask. Okay. So I hope that, you know, that everybody was focused on how do we engage the listing agent. Let's balance that with how do we get our buyers to make more competitive offers that are right for them. Okay, not to overpay, But Joe, you hit the cover off the ball when you said everybody gets a little uncomfortable with their, first or second house. And then a year later, it's a no-brainer, right?
Yep.
So thank you for sharing. I think that this was, helpful. Hopefully, you may leave this call without anything that's like a sniper shot, but I think it's programming and working on your mindset on how to approach buyers. And if you just put emotionally frustrated buyers, that's the way that they are, and you treat them with compassion and you give them information to make the right decision. And we don't get emotionally involved. We just stick to the facts so we can help them solve their problem. Okay. And we're not solving problems if we're getting outbid on offers. Okay. Our clients are here because they want to buy a house. Okay. And that's the market forces. So thank you, everybody. I think this was a great session. Everybody that contributed, Joe, Anthony, Stacy, Colleen, Bruce, I appreciate everything. And if I forgot your contribution, I apologize. I'm going to put a lot of the notes onto the Abundance in Real Estate channel. If you want to look back at it, it will be there. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you, Rob. Great session.
Bye-bye.